Hello and welcome to the channel. This is Mish, and in this video I'd like to go over how to build a low-cost camera crane. Mind you, this is not some DIY $20 setup. You will still need proper equipment, a trip to the rental house, a camera stabilizer, and people who know what they're doing. But if you're already working on set, most of this equipment is probably already in your grip truck or rental package, and all you need are a few additional bits and pieces to make it happen. Economically, this can be much more efficient than renting a proper camera crane, which usually comes with its own crew and a much increased price tag. So here's an example of the kind of shot you can achieve with this setup. What we used for this was a Menace arm kit that looks something like this, a Ronin stabilizer, a wind-up stand capable of safely holding the load, and 2 pieces of speed rail. So let's set up the whole system. We start with a proper wind-up stand that can safely hold at least 6 or 7 meters of boom. Here I have 2 3.6 meters pipes connected with a Menace arm kit. Consider that the stand must be strong enough for the leverage created by the boom arm and all additional counterweights. Attach the pipes together using a connecting coupler. Overall, this gives me about 7 meters speed rail. These pieces go to the front and the back and must be positioned horizontally for this setup. Then you can mount the whole assembly onto the wind-up stand like so. The next step is attaching ratchet straps. A quick tip: position the ratchets themselves closer to the ends of the boom. This makes adjusting things much easier. Then add another ratchet strap on the other side. Place a sandbag on each leg of the wind-up stand. Now for an important part. At the front of the crane we create a suspension using 3 grip heads and 1 short extension arm, like this. It is very important that the middle grip head remains free floating. This is the one that will hold the Ronin stabilizer, and it should not be rigidly attached. If it is, all the vibrations from the crane go directly into the motors and the gimbal starts vibrating. The free floating grip head acts like a simple vibration isolator and lets the gravity work with us, not against us, to stabilize the camera properly. This is our final assembly. Now let's balance the Ronin. Here I'm using a Ronin RS2 and a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K for this shot. One thing I've noticed is that it's important to balance the Ronin twice. The first time is during the initial setup on the ground, with the Ronin upright in its normal position. The second time after you hang it upside down on the crane. What I noticed is that the system becomes much more sensitive when it's upside down. Once you add safety chains, power and signal cables, the balance shifts quite a bit. Because the gimbal is very sensitive in this inverted position, it's important to rebalance it once it's hanging from the crane. Try to keep the cables as light and loose as possible, because cable tension can easily affect the balance, and test all the motions before raising the crane. Before attaching the Ronin, position the crane exactly where it needs to be. Another crucial thing I try to do is make sure that all the legs are level. I usually use a phone level app to check that each leg is perfectly straight. If it isn't, I either add some Apple boxes or slightly reposition the legs. Now we can attach the Ronin to the suspension. Again, this will not work if the gimbal is rigidly attached. The motors will start vibrating and shaking, and the entire setup won't function properly. When it's free floating like this, it works. Once everything is attached, make sure it is secured with safety chains, especially if you plan to fly the rig over people or close to them. This is still a heavy rig on a long boom, so make sure you know the load limits of your stands and hardware, and always secure everything with safety chains. No shot is worth potential damage or injuries. Next, balance the crane itself using sandbags. In this setup I used 2 sandbags at the back of the rig and one roughly in the middle so I could move it back and forth to fine-tune the balance. Now let's talk about controls. To control the camera I use the DJI phone app with Force Mobile function. In the settings you can adjust motion speed and smoothness depending on the type of the shot you need. If something doesn't behave the way you expect, it's worth checking those settings and tweaking them a bit. Once you enable Force Mobile and start moving your phone mounted on a fluid head, the camera repeats the same motion. This is a very convenient way to control this system. On our shoot day, we had a monitor receiving a wireless signal from the camera mounted on the same tripod as the phone. One important detail: the phone must stay in its upright position, not landscape, otherwise the control doesn't work properly. With this setup, you can watch the image while directly controlling the camera movement from the tripod. In this particular example, the shot required the camera to move forward and upward. What I noticed is that this specific motion is not ideal for this setup. To make it work perfectly, you really need some sort of vibration isolator like this one here. Without it, there are just too many movements for the Ronin to compensate, and at some point it may start to shake or vibrate. We had to rebalance the rig a few times during the shoot. In another shot we did, the only motion was vertical. The crane arm was simply moving up and down. In that case, the movement was very smooth. When the Ronin is only working on one axis like this, the setup works very well. That's it for this video, hope this was helpful. It's obviously not a replacement for a real techno crane, but for smaller productions it can be a surprisingly effective solution. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.